Hi everybody, in this video we're going to look at line charts. So I'm on the tab on the worksheet that says growth history. And what you have here again is two sets of data. So you have the date and then you have what's happening for different funds here, right? So the date isn't common to both, but you have different values. So because you have quantitative data, in both cases, this could be a great case to use X and Y data and make an actual line graph instead. So instead of using bars here, although you could do that as well, we can make a line graph. So I want to show you how to do that. So I'm just going to highlight my data. And again, you can use this feature here, or you can go up top to insert. And again, if I want a line graph, I could click here and look at my different options. And you guys know me, don't use these 3D weird lines. It's so hard to read. Keep the 2D lines, something straightforward here. Or under recommended charts, again, they'll recommend some different styles for you. So the first one is your basic line chart. You know, here was a cluster column like we did last time. So I'm going to do a line chart this time. I'm just going to click OK. All right, now as before, you can move this to a different sheet. I'm going to not do that this time because my summary sheet is getting pretty cluttered over there. And I don't feel like reorganizing it right now. So if you want to move it and try playing around with reorganizing your different charts, you can. I'm just going to leave this here with the data and just kind of show you some key features again. So here I have my chart. So again, if I don't click on my chart, then I won't see any of those tools. If I click on my chart, then I will now see all those tools open up, and I also will see chart design up top. So that will pop up as well. Again, you're going to want to change your title. You do want to make sure that your titles are appropriate here. So let's call this growth of 10,000 investment. Okay. And again, you can move this around like we've seen. You can resize this if it's a little too big for you, or if you want to move it, you can go ahead and do that too. So whatever you find helpful, I'll let you kind of do that on your own. We've seen it a few times in the videos. And again, if you click the chart, you could even change, your fill color. If you want to go that way, you could change the background of your chart to be green. I don't really recommend that here, but you can kind of play around with different colors and things like that, borders and whatnot, fonts, sizes, and so on your own. So let me show you a couple of key features here that will be helpful for you. So one of them are axes. So here, so if you go to your chart options, you can see that the axes are there, right? You definitely want to have, you don't want something like this. You want to have axes and labels. If you want to, you could also add in axis titles, and you can see that they'll give you space here to actually put titles. I don't know that they're really necessary here because our legend is pretty clear, I think, already. But when it's not, you do want to add in axis titles. It's always important to have everything labeled and clear and easy to follow. So, if I don't think this is clear enough down here, then I could put something like, year or time or something to that effect, right? So whatever is going to be helpful to that reader. And then over here too, I could click into that and go ahead and enter my title that way. All right, you can also do other things. Let's close this for a second, obviously there. So again, you can kind of come in here, play around. And then again, when you click the arrow to the right, you can change, where that is. I tend to like it above, but if you need more room, sometimes it works centered. Here, I don't think it works very well. And so on. Again, you can kind of decide which ones you want to display there for your axes titles. Maybe for my axis titles, I don't really need the vertical one. I think that's pretty straightforward, right? It's dollar signs already. So maybe I would like to just do just time on the x-axis. So again, I'll let you kind of play around there. And again, you have your grid lines and things like we mentioned. So playing around with all these different features can be helpful here. All right, you can also click into the graph. So again, there's all these different features of the graph that can be edited individually. So if I click on my x-axis, for instance, then that will also pop open here. And you can scroll down and actually change your tick marks and things like that. So for instance, right now it's counting by ones, right? Going 1 year at a time. So maybe I would like to change that if it feels a little bit too cluttered down there. So I can go by fives instead. And I can also change how I want to mark things and label them. So right now, our label is outside. You can change inside. And so on here, I can make these cross hatches. You can kind of see them changing. When I did cross, inside, outside. So you can see how those little tick marks are changing a little bit. Cross is pretty nice because it goes above and below the axis. So now instead of being every 1, right, now they're every 5. So I can tweak where my axes are. I also would want to tweak my labels though. So notice that my tick marks changed, but my labels are still the same, which is kind of confusing. So if I go down here, again, I can change my labels. And I can specify the unit. So again, I could go by fives in this case as well here. I'm just going to hit enter on there to make that change. So if it doesn't update automatically, hit enter. And now you can see that my labels have updated appropriately as well. So this is a little bit easier to see. If you think fives are too much, you can change it, go by twos, right? So again, you want enough information so that the client or the reader understands where the data points are, but you don't want it to be so cluttered that they can't follow it either. So that's how you can change your tick marks there, which I think is, really helpful. Now, you can also edit your lines. So if I double click on a line, you can see that these different plot features come open. You can go to the fill button and see how it says line versus marker. Marker will actually show the individual points as well. So here it's selected as none, where we're not showing the points. But if you hit automatic, it will show those points. And you can change, the different formatting that's used here and size. You can also change the color. So I like to use the same color points as my line, but if you don't like that, you could actually even change the points to be a different color if you want to. So you can go around and actually play with that feature too. And then if I unclick that, now you can see that I have the individual points there. So maybe that is more helpful for your data. And I could do the same thing if I wanted to with the green one. So that is found here under the fill option. So sometimes you open up in this way, but under your fill option, you can actually highlight the markers. And just make sure you go to marker options and make sure that it is selected because it defaults to none in this case. So then now you can see those markers. And again, you can kind of play around here and change it. If you want to do triangles, you can do triangles and just kind of have some fun. But again, our goal is to make things readable and easy for the client. So kind of think about, well, what is more readable? Is it more readable to have those dots in there so you can actually follow along? Or is it a cleaner and more easily understood graph without those points in there? So there's some things you definitely have to think about. So some points here, and I'm just reiterating these from your text, are, like I've said, keep it simple. Charts that are too clustered or have too many elements are difficult to read. So they should be simple. They should be very natural for the reader to follow along. The reader should not have to have a math degree to understand what's happening, right? So you want to keep them clean and simple for the reader. You want to focus on the message that you're trying to convey. It should be ethical. I'm not saying you want to distort the data. We never distort the data. That is really bad. There are lots of companies out there that do that. You don't want to distort your data, but you want to make sure you're focusing on what you want, right? If you just want to focus on these two items, for instance, then only show those two, right? We don't need to show all the other funds or all other investments if that's not our focus of this meeting, right? So think about who your audience is and what information you're trying to convey. Again, choose colors and styles carefully as well. So you want things that are going to print well, that your audience can read. So think about, visually, is it appealing? Can maybe someone who is colorblind, can they read it? Are you using appropriate colors? And also, does it print well too? So just some things to think about as well as you go through your graphs.